Okay, happy Wednesday or Tuesday night, depending on when you're watching this. This is your video lesson for March 27th, solving rational equations. Our learning goals explore solving rational equations. And we're just going to get right into some examples. So remember, rationals, you're looking at dividing polynomials. Basically, you have fractions, and you're going to have variables in both the numerator and the denominator. You can think of solving this one of two ways. You can think of, I got to cross multiply that, and anything times 0 gives me 0. Or you can think of it as, I know that the numerator has to be 0. So really, 2 plus x has got to be equal to 0. And of course, with some very quick algebra, x equals -2 is a solution. If you ever needed to check your answers, you could just sub that value back in. So put -2 in, leaves you with 2 plus -2 on top of the fraction, the numerator. 2 minus 2, 0. 0 divided by anything equals 0. Same idea here. Think of cross multiplying equals 0, or you know the numerator has to equal 0. Now there's nothing else we can do with that. We're just left with 5 equals 0. That is a nonsense result. Obviously 5 does not equal 0. So this one actually has no solution, which makes sense. We got a 5 on top. There's no way I can get 0. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit more difficult. So for C, we have variables on both sides. Again, there's two ways to kind of think of this. You can bring over one of the fractions, make it subtraction, set it equal to 0. Or even though I know it's not technically the strictest math step, you can kind of treat this as a cross multiply question. So we can take x minus 3, cross multiply by x minus 2, and set that equal to x minus 5, cross multiply by x plus 9. Do some foiling, you're left with x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals x squared plus 4x minus 45. Collect like terms. I'm going to skip some steps here. These x squareds, they're going to cancel out. Negative 5x, bring the 4x over, becomes negative 4x. And that's going to give you negative 9x. So when I bring this over, it's going to become negative. And we have negative 45. When I bring the 6 over, that's going to become negative 6. Negative 9x equals negative 51. Divide both sides by negative 9. X equals 51 over 9. Again, you can check your solution. Sub that in for x. See if you got left side equals right side. Our next one. First thing we're going to have to do. So we can't cross multiply here because we got multiple terms. So we're going to bring that 4 over first. So 3 over x plus 2 over x plus 1 minus 4, set it equal to 0. Now we've got to find a common denominator. Your common denominator is just 1 of everything, so x plus 1, which means you got to do 3 times x plus 1 plus 2 times x, and then that negative 4 is going to get multiplied by x and x plus 1. At this point, you can think of cross multiplying, going to be equal to 0, or just remember it's when the numerator equals 0. So if we do distributive property, 3x plus 3 plus 2x minus 4x squared minus 4x equals 0. Collect like terms. Minus 4x squared and plus x and plus 3 equals 0. We got a negative out front of the x squared term. So you can think of common factoring at a -1, or if you want to, you can just move everything to the other side. So you could get 0 equals 4x squared minus x minus 3. So what we did is move all those terms to the other side of the equal sign, and they all change signs, and we got rid of that negative out front of the 4x squared. If you don't like that method, common factor -1 first, and you'll end up with the exact same thing. How do I solve that? Got to look for the zeros. How do I find the zeros? I got to factor. Now, depending on how you prefer to factor this, your options are window method or box method, depending what your teacher called it. You can use my method, Sulio style, if you know it, or you can use decomposition. I'll leave it up to you, to whatever you want to use. But that's going to, when you factor this, x minus 1 and 4x plus 3. So my solutions are x equals 1 and x equals -3/4. And you don't have to, but on a test, you could always sub those back in for x quickly if you have extra time to make sure you get a left side equals right side. We're now going to switch gears, get into some word problems. And word problems for this unit maybe are what you would consider to be the hardest. So we got, when they work together, Sam and Brayden can cut and weed Mr. Sulio's lawn in 42 minutes. When Brayden works alone, he can do it in 13 minutes, less than when Sam does it alone. How long does it take, missing each, how long does it take each person to do alone? So let's say we let S be the time it takes Sam to do it. So she can do one lawn in S minutes. We know that Brayden can do it in 13 minutes less. So S minus 13. And when they work together, so that's why we're adding Sam plus Brayden. So that's like Sam, that's like Brayden. They can do one lawn in 42 minutes. And that would be together. So we are ultimately looking for S. Exact same idea as what we did before. Make a common denominator. 42S, S minus 13. And then multiply, so you're going to end up with 1 times 42, S minus 13. And then 1 times 42S. And then we're going to end up with, now when I bring, just skipping a step here to save some room, when I bring this over, I'm going to have negative. So it would be -1 over 42 equals 0. So we're going to have minus S times S minus 13 equals 0. Again, think of it as cross multiplying the bottom to get rid of it, or you just know when the numerator is equal to 0. The fraction is only equal to 0 when the numerator is equal to 0. So when we do some distributive property, 42S minus 546, and then plus 42S minus S squared, and then plus 13S. Collect like terms. Negative S squared plus 97S minus 546 equals 0. At this point, you could common factor out the -1 or just switch the sides. So S squared minus 97S plus 546. Factor that. That's just simple trinomial. Now the numbers are big, so it's not like super simple, but you'll be looking for two numbers that multiply to 46 and combine to -97. If the numbers are too high, you could always use quadratic formula on it. And if we do quadratic formula on that, you're you're going to end up with s minus 91 and s minus 6. Our solutions then, s equals 91 and s equals 6. So we ended up with two positive solutions. However, one of these does not make sense in the context of the question. And if we look at this one, that basically means it takes, so remember s was the amount of time it takes Sam to do the lawn. If we look at that 6, and if we go back and check our equation, if I put 6 in there, 6 minus 13 is negative 7. How can Brayden do it in negative 7 minutes? Not possible. So this solution is not possible. And when you do these word problems, you're always going to have to double check to make sure those work. So what does that mean? That means 91 is our solution. So therefore, it takes Sam 91 minutes alone, and Brayden, which would be 13 minutes less. So if you do 91 minus 13, you should get 78. And hopefully that makes sense, everyone. Our next question. So, Tia bought a case of t-shirts for 450 bucks. She kept 2 for herself and sold the rest for $5.60. She made a profit of $10 on each shirt. How many were in the case originally? If you had to calculate a profit, just in general, you would take how much you sold them for. So, sold minus your cost equals your profit. Let's start with the cost. So it cost her 450 bucks for X amount of t-shirts. She sold them for 560 bucks, but she took 2 out and kept them for herself. So cost, we had X shirts, sold, she sold X minus 2 shirts because she kept 2 for herself. So that would be the profit per shirt, and we know each shirt she profited $10. Again, to skip some steps, bring over the 10 becomes negative 10, set it equal to 0, look for a common denominator, which is basically 1 of everything, so x minus 2, x, and this is going to become 560x minus 450x plus 900. So I have skipped some steps there. We multiplied this by this. We multiplied that by that. So 450x plus 900. And when I bring that 10 over, it's going to become negative 10. And then you got to multiply by x and x minus 2. And that equals 0. That happens when the top is equal to 0. So we'll collect some like terms first. 560 minus 450x gives you 110x plus 900 minus 10x squared plus 20x equals 0. Negative 10x squared plus 130x plus 900 equals 0. Factor out a negative 1, or just move everything to the other side. And we have that. Common factor out a 10. Just to make things a little bit smaller. So you'd be looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 90 and add to negative 13. So 0 equals, those two numbers are negative 18 and 5. So x minus 18, and x plus 5, which means your solutions, x equals 18, x equals -5. One of those doesn't make sense. Obviously, you can't have -5 t-shirts. So this right here, not possible. So that means this right here is our solution, which means Tia, therefore, Tia had bought a box of 18. Initially, there was 18 shirts. So, but a box of 18 t-shirts. Again, hopefully that makes sense, everyone. Make sure you know how to do a question like number 2 and number 3. It's definitely going to show up somewhere important in the future. So that's it for your video lesson. If I didn't see you on Wednesday, then have a great day, and I will see you on Thursday for our final lesson, solving rational inequalities. And then don't forget that you have a test on Tuesday, April 2nd. And there's your work, page 285. And again, start working on the chapter reviews on page 240 and 308. Have a good night.